As a nutritionist, the genetic test is crystal ball gazing into your future. Now, the Metabolite panel really helps us out diving into the unknown when a lot of times disease progression really doesn't have an answer. How can nutrition help? Well, in the Metabolite panel, we look at cortisol levels. Now, please understand, cortisol is driven by your sleep, by your diet, by your stress. But what if there could be that your genetics is an underlying factor? Please understand, your software code is what determines who you are and how your body performs or functions. And the Metabolite test is able to go in and say that, hey, you have the cortisol not maybe because of diet or sleep, but because of the gene lab saying that your algorithm for cortisol secretions is lower, higher, elevated. So for me as a nutritionist, if somebody is genetically elevated, I can caution you in a counseling room on not going overboard on your diet, improving your sleep quality, and making sure that you work out in the morning in a fed state, not in a fasted state. So there are many things like this that could be tweaked from a personalized approach in the genetic testing. In the hematological metabolites, we have so many things like the factor VIII, the erythropoietin levels, IgE levels, anti-nuclear antibodies, C-reactive protein levels. A lot of times my clients do the blood test with C-reactive protein and we're not able to figure out why. But with the genetic test, we understand that it's a genetic predisposition to having high C-reactive levels. Now what would I do? I would look at the homocysteine levels, I would look at your lipoprotein A, lipoprotein B from the plaque formation perspective and heart disease, heart attack or stroke. Whereas if your C-reactive proteins are normal and typical, I'm not bothered, but your blood test has high C-reactive levels and I know it is environmentally caused, not genetically caused. So these are factors that help your nutritionist, your healthcare provider, or even your family doctor come to a conclusion. And I'm really hopeful that when AI comes in, that all of this is available to you at a real-time basis, 24/7, 365 days a year for the rest of your life. Because the genetic test is a once-in-a-lifetime test. So once you have that template, whatever your healthcare professional is, whether it's a nutritionist, doctor, physio, trainer, whoever it is, in addition to that, AI comes aboard and says, these are the things you need to do. I genuinely believe that you will be able to make more better changes to the outcome in the form of changes to sleep, diet, exercise, medication too. So I'm not ruling out medication because sometimes, like for example, high ferritin or low ferritin levels or immunoglobulin A2 levels will need medical support to help you lead a better life. In addition to this, in the metabolites, we have both the liver, the renal, and the thyroid function. Now, a blood test gives me enough of information. But is the blood test transient, meaning for that quarter, for that month, for that week? Did you do a blood test 16 times this year? And all 16 times, you found out that your SGOT or SGPT levels are always high. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. What about your bilirubin levels, where you have damage? Now, the genetic test will give us an indicator that your software code is slightly defunct. Now, what if I as a nutritionist get that information? Now, I know that bilirubin is lowered with certain beverages as well as things like sugarcane juice. Now, if you're diabetic and I have to give you sugarcane juice and you're wearing a CGM device, imagine my dilemma if you have high bilirubin levels because of your genetics. And recently, I made a video which talked about I made a mistake. And what was the mistake? I always had training, medical training, nutritional training, that uric acid comes from your diet and your lifestyle. But the latest research now is showing that it's coming from your genetics as well as your microbiome. So when I as a nutritionist work on asking you questions, ask for the blood test, ask for the genetic test, ask for the microbiome test, it's a function of getting all of this information. You know, creatinine levels is something that I find in today's world is a function of dehydration. But what if you tell me you drink enough of water? Could your creatinine levels be a function of your genetics where you naturally produce higher levels? And should I then be worried? I've had cases where people have this genetically at a typically elevated levels. So as long as I'm seeing that your liver and kidney is not affected, you're destined to have high creatinine levels and that's who you are. So sometimes also having a blood test could be detrimental to your peace of mind without the genetic test, if you get my drift. For example, I am a person who has a high cholesterol marker, right? As long as my homocysteine, my lipoprotein A, lipoprotein B is not high, my C-reactive protein is low, and I have looked at all of these things. I know what are the triggers. So then I do not get alarmed by my blood test. However, my doctor who does not have viewpoints of the genetic test is getting alarmed with my high cholesterol level and wants to give me a statin. But I've gone one step further. As Ryan Fernando, I've done even my drug genomic testing to tell me which drug works thumbs up for my gene or thumbs down for my gene. So at the end of the day, you can look at all of your metabolites. And for me as a nutritionist, the blood test is not sufficient enough. For example, in the serum vitamin levels, we look at whether you will have low levels of carotenoids and tocopherols, the vitamin A and the vitamin E. You know what people do is when they have low vitamin A or vitamin E, they take a multivitamin which is fat soluble. Do you know that high levels of vitamin A or vitamin E in a supplement could trigger breast cancer? So the fact of the matter is here is if you have low levels of processing and you have low blood levels and then you have another marker for cancers in your body, you're now I'm navigating from a very cautious point of view to supplement or not supplement. So at the end of the day, I look at all of these from lipoprotein A to lipoprotein B in the blood test and now in the metabolite genetic test. It's really tough, by the way, to put all of this together. But fortunately for us at Core Nutrition Clinics, we are building algorithms in our dietary preparation software that helps my team of dietitians kind of take your genetic test, your microbiome test, and your blood test and pass it through a filter. And the benefit of that filter would be a better outcome for choices that we give you. You would spend this much on a vacation, why not spend it on your body?